There was a time when the sound of a pencil sharpener was louder than any cell phone ring, when the smell of chalk dust filled the air, and the biggest distraction in class was the doodle on your trapper keeper. School in the 70s and 80s had its own rhythm, its own little traditions, and a set of supplies that defined an era. Today, we're looking at 10 school supplies from the 70s and 80s that kids today just wouldn't recognize. 1. The mighty trapper keeper. If you grew up in the 80s, you probably remember the snap of a trapper keeper closing. These binders weren't just for paper, they were a status symbol, covered in bright designs, rainbows, or futuristic grids. Students loved how they could hold folders, notes, and even secret doodles all in one place. By the 90s, schools started banning them because teachers claimed they were too bulky and distracting. Still, for many, nothing says "back to school" quite like the flap of a trapper keeper. 2. Metal lunchboxes. Before soft coolers and insulated bags, kids carried their sandwiches in hard, metal lunchboxes. They came decorated with superheroes, TV shows, and Saturday morning cartoon characters. Everything from Star Wars to the Brady Bunch. Opening one felt like opening a treasure chest at noon. Over time, safety concerns and cheaper plastic designs pushed them aside. But for collectors and kids of the past, those dented, sticker-covered lunchboxes were a badge of honor. 3. Chalkboard erasers. Every classroom had a stack of thick, felt erasers caked in white chalk dust. Students were often sent to the hallway to clap the erasers, banging them together until the air filled with a cloud that coated your clothes. It was messy, but it was a ritual. Dry erase boards arrived in the 90s, and suddenly chalkboards started to vanish. Today's students may never know the joy of that little puff of chalk dust when you smacked two erasers together. 4. Film strip projectors. Long before smartboards and YouTube, teachers wheeled in film strip projectors. These machines clicked through a series of still images, while the class followed along with a cassette tape that beeped to signal the next slide. The lights dimmed, and suddenly, the classroom felt like a tiny movie theater. As technology advanced, projectors gave way to VHS players and eventually digital screens. But nothing quite matched the excitement of that beep echoing through the room. 5. Peachy folders. In the 70s and 80s, students carried golden yellow peachy folders decorated with athletes drawn in sketchy outlines. They weren't flashy, but they were everywhere. Kids doodled on them, scribbled band names, or practiced bubble letters on the covers. They lasted for decades before slowly fading away, replaced by glossy, colorful folders sold in bulk. But for many, peachies were as much a canvas as they were a place to hold your homework. 6. The overhead projector. Few classroom sites were as iconic as the glow of an overhead projector. Teachers placed clear plastic sheets on the glass, writing with squeaky markers while their notes appeared larger than life on the wall. The fan whirred, the bulb glowed, and sometimes the transparency slipped right onto the floor. By the 2000s, digital projectors replaced them, but for a generation of students, the overhead was a classroom stage. 7. Crank pencil sharpeners. Mounted to the classroom wall, the hand crank pencil sharpener was both a tool and a little workout. You stuck in your pencil, turned the handle, and hoped it came out with a perfect sharp point, not broken lead. The sound echoed across the room, sometimes giving you a few seconds of escape from a boring lesson. Eventually, disposable mechanical pencils and quiet electric sharpeners took over. But that grinding noise remains a soundtrack of school days past. 8. Lisa Frank supplies. By the late 80s, a wave of neon colors hit the classroom thanks to Lisa Frank. Rainbows, unicorns, and smiling dolphins covered folders, notebooks, and stickers. For kids, especially in elementary school, these supplies were pure magic. The brand faded with changing trends in the 90s and 2000s, but the explosion of color made the school day feel just a little brighter. 9. Ink erasers. Back when erasable pens were still unreliable, kids carried special ink erasers. They had a blue or gray gritty end meant to rub away ink, though often they just tore the paper. Students used them with determination, leaving behind thin holes in their homework. With modern erasable pens and digital work, these strange little erasers became obsolete. Still, they remind us of a time when fixing mistakes wasn't so simple. 10. The rolling book bag. Before backpacks dominated hallways, many kids hauled rolling book bags or even hard plastic briefcase-style carriers. They creaked and clacked across the floor, stuffed with heavy textbooks. While practical, they often broke or became too bulky for crowded classrooms. By the late 80s and 90s, soft backpacks with padded straps became the standard. Those old rolling bags, though, remind us of a time when school supplies tried to look a little more grown up. Looking back at these supplies is like flipping through an old yearbook. Each item tells a story of mornings at the bus stop, afternoons in crowded classrooms, and the little tools that carried us through. They may be gone, but they live on in memory, in old photographs, and maybe even in a box in your attic. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, be sure to like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more nostalgic looks at the way things used to be.